Ron, you said you had some questions.
Yes, sir. Yesterday, Kathy and I were talking, and one of the things we realized that we talked about was someone had asked her, and after talking to my nephew last night, he was saying the same thing. This was initiated in Galveston, Texas. Well, how did it become a national holiday? And what I was trying to get him to see was, yeah, it was initiated in Texas, but there were pockets of slavery going on in other places. And so me trying to get him to understand it, and I wanted you to talk about the spiritual significance of that. And I even mentioned to him, as I mentioned to Kathy, there was a book out there that I had some years ago, and I loaned it out, I'm sure, to somebody, but it was called The Emancipation of Robert Sadler. But it talked about slavery in South Carolina that was in the 1920s. There were still plantations of slaves out there. So, the spiritual significance of this, if you could go into that a little bit, that would be, I think, helpful to us. And also, along those same lines, we were talking about what you guys were doing yesterday in Union. So go into your celebration a little bit about that as well, and the what all that meant. Okay.
Okay. First of all, there were pockets of slavery up until the 60s, the early 60s, 1960s, in places like Alabama and southern Mississippi, and some places in Georgia, in eastern Georgia. And that tells us freedom does not come from a legislative body whose goal was to keep you enslaved anyway. And when I speak of the legislative body whose goal was to keep us enslaved, I'm not simply talking about the states where there were pockets of slavery. I'm talking about the U.S. government as well. And the reason I say that is because the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was really a political act with no teeth. It was not worth the paper it was written on. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that Africans who were enslaved during that period, as well as Africans today, we needed and still need something tangible to hold on to that gives us hope to move forward. And I'm speaking totally in political terms right now. And historical, of course. And the reason I say that it was not worth the paper it was written on is because Abraham Lincoln drafted the Emancipation Proclamation in September 1862. And he issued it with his signature in 1863. January 1st, it was supposed to take effect. Well, the Emancipation Proclamation only targeted the 11 states that had seceded from the Union, which means that he had no authority over them anyway to free any slaves because they had seceded from the Union and he was engaged in a war to pull them back into the Union. So that would be no different than him issuing a proclamation that was going to free slaves in another country. no teeth at all. If he had been serious about it, then he would have included the border states. There were 4 border states, Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware, that were not targeted by the Emancipation Proclamation. They were allowed to remain slave states, and there were about 4 million slaves in those states. And during this period of 1863, West Virginia became a state, and they were allowed to keep their slaves as well. So when I say it had no teeth, and it had no meaning either, because if it did, then it would not have excluded those border states. As far as it relates to Galveston, the war continued until 1865. And when Granger went into Galveston in 1865, he informed the enslaved people that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed 2 years earlier. And that's the celebration of the signing of it in a symbolic way, because the 13th Amendment that freed slaves was not ratified until December of 1865. So constitutionally, freedom did not come until 1865. Legitimate government, speaking at it from a legitimate governance point of view, the authority that Lincoln had to free the slaves did not come until December of 1865. And because slavery had been codified within the Constitution, it had to be an amendment to override the codification of slavery. So what does that mean spiritually? It is my belief that what is being said through this spiritually is that the one who enslaved you, the government, the energy, people who enslave you are not the ones you can look to for your freedom, especially since they fought a war and they killed each other to keep you in slavery. It is you who have to free them and yourself. And that is one of the reasons, if you read the 13th Amendment, it had caveats about criminality in the amendment itself, which meant that at any point you could be charged with a crime and enslaved again. So it was upon the shoulders of the African to bring about our freedom from bondage for those who held us in bondage as well as ourselves. And that could only come with a total change in the government itself. And that change was not going to come as a result of the people who were the governing forces. It would have to come from some other place, and that other place that it had to come from was from a place of spiritual legitimacy, because the religious illegitimacy is what supported it. So it had to come from a spiritual place. And the only ones who were qualified, and I use that word very loosely, I can't think of another right now, to do that, equipped. The only ones who were equipped to do that were Africans who are highly spiritual and who understand the depth of loving kindness, forgiveness, and mercy. And that never happened until recently, when we begun to desire the exposure of everything that was antithetical to how we were created and what we were created to do it. With that exposure, here we are now at a spiritual place where we are beginning to see the manifestation talking about the African, I'm talking about for everyone worldwide. And the signature that made Juneteenth a national holiday is a manifestation of something that is far greater in the spiritual realm. The manifestations that we see in this realm are usually those things that we are familiar with. And the things that we are familiar with catches our attention. The energy we put in them is what makes them be what they are. The energy of Juneteenth, as I offered one of the prayers and entered into the historical record yesterday, it dealt with this being the end of white supremacy, the end of a number of things I named. However, it was not coming to an end, but the end now. That this represent the end to these things that are antithetical to humanity, and that by doing so, it initiated or opened a gateway for a rapid change spiritually. And it was significant that it was done in union, because it is in union that the draft to the papers of secession were written by the then governor of South Carolina. And South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union in December of 1860. And it led other states out of the Union. It's ironic that the second one was Texas. Then the Union also was considered by the U.S. government to be not one of, but the most dangerous county in the state of South Carolina for Africans who were newly freed, but also one of the most dangerous in the country. And that is because Union had the most progressive Africans who were previously enslaved in the country, meaning that there were elected magistrates in Union. There were major businesses in Union owned by ex-enslaved people. There were the voices were heard and listened to by the governor. There were several who were a part of the local militia, which ended up becoming the National Guard, of course. So I think that was the significance of it. The other part of it is that it was held in South Carolina, and I think we do a disservice to our heritage when we begin to look at 1619 as being the beginning of slavery in this country. Now, don't get me wrong, it has nothing to do with the 1619 project. It's the date. And when I say a disservice, slavery actually, the first enslaved people from Africa actually were in South Carolina in the PD region in 1526. So I think that by acknowledging that, what we have done in South Carolina has totally obliterated the power that was used to not only enslave South Carolina, but to perpetuate it around this country with that same energy seeping out of the borders of this country into the hearts and minds of others, making this country a leader of the world, and that leadership being for the good of our Caucasians and not for people and not for humanity. So I do believe that we have transformed the energy of the state and the effectiveness of that transformation it's only just begun to be seen. We are going to have major manifested experiences in the coming weeks and months. There are going to be things that happen that's going to be just as shocking as it was for that Juneteenth bill to move as rapidly as it did through Congress. We're going to see a shift in thought patterns of people who we thought never would shift their thinking because of the transformation of the energy that is taking place and that has taken place. I think I may have answered or responded to both of the questions. I'm not sure. Did I?
Go into what you guys did in Union yesterday, the significance of the soil and all the stuff you did.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty significant, something different.
Well, what it is, EJI Equal Justice Initiative has been for some time engaged in uncovering not only the lynchings but people who are falsely in prison as well. But the focus, one of the major focus, has been on going through historical records in search of people who were lynched and remembering them and memorializing them. And the way that they have been leading communities to memorialize those who were lynched in their midst was by going to the lynching sites and recovering soil and putting that soil in a gallon jars. And one jar stays in the county, one goes to Montgomery, Alabama, where they will put them in the Equal Justice Museum. During the ceremony, what happens is there are the empty jars are there on the table next to the containers which hold the soil, and a short bio of the person who was lynched and where they were lynched, in the year that they were lynched, and their age if available, and how they were lynched, whether it was through like 500 gunshots and another was disemboweled, how they were lynched. All these things are read there at the ceremony, and we honor them by collecting this soil because we feel that their blood has seeped into this soil, and we honor them by collecting this soil and we place it in the jar. This does not leave this places rather the name of those who were lynched in the hearts of those who were present at these ceremonies, but it also humanizes those who were lynched, and it also exposes what needs to be dealt with in this nation, in that particular community. So the spiritual significance of it is more than a collection of soil. Soil is, to me, the soil is simply a representation of the gathering of the energy of our ancestors to bring an end to the injustices, not only in those particular communities, but joining forces to bring an end to the injustices worldwide. Did I cover it, Ron? Or
Yes, sir. When you first mentioned it to me, one of the things I thought of when we look at earth and ground in the spiritual sense, it talks about the consciousness of the earth.
yes.
And when you talked about putting the soil in a jar, that's what it made me think of, capturing that and changing the energy of it, changing the energy of the consciousness of the earth. Because if you look at that in a spiritual sense, it's not just Union County. It's all of South Carolina. It's all of America, and even the world where those injustices were done. So the significance I thought that it had, a part of it.
You're spot on. Is there any other question pertaining to that or anything else, or are there any comments or additions to that?
Hey, Rip. How's that? I know it might be different, but to me it seems like it's the same. When Abel killed Cain and buried him, and God called and said he hear his blood calling out to him.
Yes. When you talked about the blood of Abel crying out from the soil, from
Right.
the earth, yeah, it is the same. The blood, what was being said is that it's crying out for justice. And when we speak of something of that nature, crying out for justice is simply saying that not justice for the one who was lynched, because there is no justice in this earth for that person. However, the justice for those who are still here, and that the remembrance and memorializing what happened results in an alteration in the consciousness of those who are still embodied in this earth. And the justice is for those who the ancestors have left in this earth, so that this never repeats itself again. So it is pretty much the same thing, Charles. And that's a heck of an observation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Pastor, Linda asked, could you speak to the colors of the flag and talk about the flag and what the colors of the flag represent?
You talking about the Juneteenth flag?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, most people don't even know it exists. The Juneteenth flag was created in 2000. There is a commission that has been pushing for Juneteenth to become a national holiday for years. They're based in Mississippi, from my understanding. In 2000, a guy named Ben Haith, Haith, I think it is, designed a flag to commemorate Juneteenth and the freedom of all Africans from slavery. And the red, white, and blue, not with the blue being at the top, of course, represents the reality that all of us are Americans, and all of us is speaking of Africans who were enslaved and are the descendants of slaves, are Americans. There is a star in the center of that flag, and it represents the hope of the future that we have. It represents a positive journey towards our destiny. The starburst represents the untapped. I'm trying to think of the word, but it speaks to the immensity of our talents, for lack of a better term, and the idea of the hope for tomorrow, knowing that we can become independent, desiring to be independent, rather, of any control. Well, that's not the right word, but anyway, in the center of that flag, there is horizon, and it talks about our being having a greater opportunity. Let me find it, because I want to get the words straight, and I'm muffling them, messing them up. Is there another question while I get this?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. This is Jackie, and I just wanted to add that my husband, in his 2021 vacation curriculum, they had already added Juneteenth, and I was just asking him. I said, where's your home office? And it's in Arizona, and he said that they're always thinking ahead because they're focused on more diversity and they want more blacks in positions or whatever. So I was like, wow. So I wondered what was the spiritual significance of that earlier this year when he told me that they get Juneteenth. I was like, wow. And a lot of people didn't know what it was. And to be honest, I knew a little bit about it, but not a whole lot. But I thought that was like, wow. It just kind of raised the brow with me. So is there a spiritual connotation with that, Pastor? With them already having it on the schedule for this year?
It is, and it is the spirituality. It's a business decision as well. They knew it was coming because of what happened with George Floyd. If you follow the politics of it, you knew that this was going to happen eventually. And the decision to do that with also is spiritual in that it gave an opportunity for our people to move forward in a company, meaning that some companies recognize the handwriting on the wall, and they are moving towards a greater diversity, and that's what I mean when I say that we are changing the energy and the consciousness of people in this country in particular, and in the earth collectively. Okay, question?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got it all messed up. Let me start over with these symbols, okay? The flag. The flag represents, of course, as I said, the freedom of Juneteenth, of the Africans from slavery. The star represents the state of Texas. That's what that is. And the reason it does because Juneteenth started in Texas. The birch represents a new beginning. The ark represents a new horizon. And the red, white, and blue reminds us that all enslaved people and ancestors and descendants of enslaved people are American also. That's what it means. Did I go through that too fast?
No.
Okay. That's what it represents. So anyway, when I said created in the year 2000, what I meant is that the June 1865 was added in the year 2000, and they added that because of the birthplace of the Juneteenth celebration. Okay. Because some of the flags don't have that 1865 on it, as some of you may know. Some of them just have the colors. You know, the starburst, the solid star represents Texas, the blue, the red, and the white, and the horizon in the middle. Any questions about this?
Does the colors represent anything, or did I miss it?
The colors represent America, that we are all Americans. That's okay. The message sense. See, this is the thing. We are Americans by virtue of being in a country. We have never been Americans based on the privilege that America offers. Every time that we have exercised or attempted to exercise the privilege of prosperity in this country, it has been dashed with massacres and murders. When we look at Rosewood and Durham and Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have come close to having a exercise of relative privilege that this country boasts about. We have been destroyed. So, and let me give you an example of what I'm saying. It still happens to this day. I was talking with Clark last night, and we were discussing a place in Columbia, a section in Columbia. In this particular place in Columbia, there was a Walmart, and then they put a Walmart, that's market in the area. And that Walmart market drove out the grocery stores that were in the area. Actually, they were closed down. And as soon as those grocery stores went out of business, the Walmart was shut down. And then, under the guise of saying that there was not enough business, they closed the market. So now the only way the people in the area can get to the grocery store is by riding a bus. So what they in effect did, they created a food desert in a predominantly African area. That's been the pattern across this country. And that forces us to eat from bodegos, corner stores, and eat canned foods as opposed to fresh vegetables. Eat canned foods as opposed to frozen vegetables. So this pattern is beginning to pick up in moderate cities, in the moderate-sized cities and towns in southern states now, as they have been done in northern states in large cities forever and a day. So the idea has not changed. The methods have only changed. Any questions about that? Comments?
I have a comment, Real. When these nice, little small grocery store, little business of people that had, and then when the Walmarts came in this area, everything was fine. But when Walmart prices start going down, so they can pull the people from them areas into them, and then when them areas went out of business, that's when Walmart jacked their price up. And then they had no other way to go but back to Walmart to buy what they need to buy.
Well, that's the system that happens. That's a business decision. But what I'm talking about is a racist decision, and that is to remove grocery stores with fresh foods out of the reach of those in our communities. That's what I'm referencing, Charles. But you're right in what you're saying also. Any other questions or comments?
Pastor, I have a question about what do we do now that we understand the significance of Juneteenth and what all of that means. What is our approach to the 4th of July now? How do we view that, and what do we do now?
Well, that is a personal choice. However, I see the 4th of July as being a celebration of slavery. When we celebrate the 4th of July, we are celebrating the independence of this nation. The Constitution, if my dates serve me correctly, my memory serves me correctly, the Constitution became effective in 1778, I believe it was. 1776 is the Declaration of Independence. And during the period of the forming of this nation, the law of the land was that Africans were slaves and had no rights in this country, no citizenship no right to citizenship in this country as well. So if we are celebrating a time period, then we are celebrating that as well. So I choose not to engage. Does that help you, Miss Kathy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. There are people who have asked me, why do I fly an American flag? I do it because we built this country, not because I celebrate the inception of this country. We literally built this nation. And why would we walk away from something we built as opposed to trying to understand how to make it beneficial to everyone in it? We have tried politically, we have tried religiously to make that happen. It has not, and we saw no progress. We simply saw a shift in tactics to keep things as they were. Now that we have begun to see that the only way to change things is to change the energy, which means changing everything spiritually, we've begun to see things change in a real manner and in real time. So I believe, as I've always believed, that the only way that this country will ever be a democracy is that the descendants of the enslaved in this country who were brought into this country make it a democracy. And the way we make it a democracy is by forgiving those who enslaved us and continue to do so, and through loving kindness. In other words, it has to be done by a transformation of the energy. And that is a spiritual task that the majority of the people have no clue as to how to accomplish that. Question, comment? Does that help, Kathy?
Yes.
Anyone else? Are there any questions about anything?
Hey, Real, since the truth is been out, how do we as black people start doing things different?
Keep doing what you're doing, Charles. And what I mean by that is keep trusting what you believe. Keep holding on to what you believe. Don't believe what your eyes see. Believe what your heart has experienced. If you shift your belief to what your eyes see, then you are believing in an illusion that is detrimental to humanity. If you hold on to what your heart has experienced, then you begin to reorient the thinking of those who are believing what their eyes see and perpetuating this illusion that is detrimental. Okay?
Okay.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Let me ask you this. Did any of you guys have any Juneteenth experiences in programmatic stuff yesterday? Attendance?
Repeat that question.
Did any of you guys attend anything celebrating Juneteenth yesterday?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Who's the yeah? Who said yes?
You mean, did we do anything yesterday for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had like a small family get together.
Okay, great. Okay. The reason I ask that is because I think it's extremely important that we do this, and the doing is being a public expression of a spiritual truth, and that spiritual truth being that if we orient the energy of Juneteenth towards love and kindness, then the whole orientation of it, regardless of where it's celebrated and regardless of who celebrates it, would be the same. One of the this young man walked up to me yesterday while I was here at the celebration before we got started, actually, and he said to me that he lives in Charlotte, and he said to me that there's this house he passes in York County when he's on his way to Union from Charlotte, and there they have this huge American flag and a Confederate flag flying in the yard. And he said that yesterday when he came through, the American flag was flying, but the Confederate flag, they had rolled it up and tucked it and taped it so that it was not flying. That spoke volumes to me. Before I tell you what it spoke to me, let me ask you, what does that say to you?
Recognition and maybe even respect.
Thank you. This is not a trick question. Anyone else?
I recognize exactly the same thing, awareness and recognition, but I also saw it as growth and change from where I guess a certain group of people that we are currently talking about used to be. So yesterday I mentioned about the food of African Americans in this country. And I'm not sure if I said this part or not, but one thing that used to happen in terms of the hatred for the group of people that are represented by that household that take the Confederate flag down, in terms of the enslaved people, they were not allowed, excuse me, they were demanded to cook the food for those enslavers, but also at the same time, the enslavers had an amount of hate that even if certain foods were left over, the enslaved people were not allowed to partake in eating of that food for nutrition. That food was automatically thrown away. So when you mention that, and we see that recognition and awareness, I also look at it contrast to what I just said and see how there has been recognition and growth in terms of, from a spiritual standpoint, those things that we talk about and focus on is having an impact in the hearts of people that, in a sense, as you were just talking about, feeling things in our heart and not in our eyes, there is a lot of things that are happening below the surface. Finish.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else?
I would think it would be the opposite, for that people would be flying their Confederate flags on Juneteenth. But I think, it's a little bit of pricking the heart. It's kind of working.
Got a lot of background noise. Go ahead. Let's start again.
I'm done.
Did everyone understand what was being said?
No.
I said,
No.
I said that you would think the opposite would be true, that they would be flying their Confederate flags even more so, as a statement against Juneteenth. But the fact that the guy rolled his up and didn't let it fly is some evidence of the heart being pricked just a little bit.
Yes. Okay, anyone else?
Conscious awakening, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There definitely was a yielding, so to speak. Even if you want to say, you say pricking a heart, a small amount of humbleness, especially from a group that has historically been extremely defiant. Yeah.
So you go from flying it to tucking it away, which is submission and respect. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. So are all of these things happening because the eye has opened, or is it because the eye is being opened?
The eye is open. Let me show you what I'm saying, okay? While we are asking that, we go far beyond just the phones. Are asking when are things going to change? Things are not changing rapidly enough. When are we going to see this balance, right? The whole time, things have been changing with a rapidity that we have never seen before. Yesterday, I was speaking with this young man who had been doing research on people from back in the day who were organizers, and he was, questioning me about some things that we did together with Cleveland Sellers and Avanex and some other people from back in the day. He had done his dissertation on what we were involved in. He called the unsung organizers or something like that. Well, I never dreamed that I would live to see the day that there was an African president or an African vice president, or the day that Juneteenth will not only be made a federal holiday, but that it would take effect immediately. I never dreamed that I would see Congress embrace Muslims or openly gay people, or Congress approve a cabinet member who is married to the same sex. I never dreamed I would see any of that in my lifetime. So I say all that to say this. The span of time that all of this has taken place is from 2008 to now. That's less than 20 years. So in less than 20 years, we have seen and experienced change that was never expected in a lifetime, let alone in less than 20 years. But more importantly, the closer you get to the time period where we are now, it has sped up in terms of manifestations. So it is my belief that we are going to see the reformation of what policing looks like in this country in a very short period of time. We saw what happened, 3 or 4 days ago in Congress, with the Supreme Court, when Obamacare was upheld, and then when they refused to hear the case. So these events are manifestations that tell me that the eye is not opening, it's opened, and if the eye the opening of the eye is based upon the desire / ability to read the signs of the time and understand what they mean. And if you don't see any understandings when you see things changing, then be silent on it, because you don't want to shape it into something that is not going to be beneficial to humanity. Does that make sense to you, Ms. Elmer?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Any other questions?
Vermel speaking. So then, the eye is open. We are in balance and harmony. Given that balance and harmony, we don't know what it looks like, but it's not necessarily the same for all the changes that are occurring. Is that right?
Yes, we are not at that place where complete balance has been manifested.
Okay.
It is manifesting, but it has not been manifested.
Okay.
Now, the other part of that is this. It is in order for humanity's eye to be open, and I'm speaking collectively, okay?
Yeah.
In order for humanity's eye to be opened, the eye of divinely chosen leadership has to be open first. And when the eye of the leadership is open, meaning the man standing in the gap, meaning the things that Jesus did and those who represented Jesus subsequently to his ascension, that means, it doesn't mean that every single eye in him is going to be open. But when the eye of humanity is open, it simply means that humanity begins to change. Earlier, speaking about the consciousness of the one who rolled the flag up, the Confederate flag, right? Heart being pricked, consciousness being pricked. That the eye opening of humanity means that he saw something. That's why it happened. He saw. And I'm not talking about with his eyes. He saw it from the eye. It doesn't mean that he's not going to unfurl that flag again, but it means that at that point he saw something, and it's those things that appear to be small that become major events. Because if that one guy saw it, how many other people who have a Confederate attitude who saw it and began to think twice about their Confederate attitude? Does that make sense for me?
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you.
Anyone else or questions from anyone else? Comments, please.
I got another one, Pastor Jay. So are we seeing a new heaven and a new earth unfold before our eyes?
We are indeed, and that is, we honestly, we could not see a new earth without seeing a new heaven first, meaning that we have to begin to see what true enlightenment looks like and experience it. The experience of enlightenment, as opposed to experiencing religion, is what delivers the new earth, meaning that changes the consciousness of the earth that we currently are experienced. And the changing of the earth doesn't mean that the trees or the birds change. The changing of the earth means that the way we think and way we process, the way we act, that begins to change. And that's what we call the manifestations of spiritual change. Does that help you?
Yes, sir. That's Yes, sir. Thank you.
What's funny?
I didn't hear you. What you said?
What's funny? I heard you laugh.
I said I was laughing at Mary, but that's another story. But anyway, okay.
In other words, none of my business. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Excuse me. Anyone else? Comment, questions? Okay. Well, let me say this. I love you guys. Excuse me. We are at a place of new experiences. It is my desire that we see more clearly than we've ever seen, and that the Creator will grant us the privilege of not only seeing the change of events, but the change of hearts of people in major places of authority. Also, I want to say to you, don't think that COVID is done. That Delta variant is deadly, and it is not to be played with. However, I want to say to you also that as quietly as it's kept, 40% of the people in South Carolina has been completely vaccinated or inoculated. The vast majority of that 40% are Africans. That doesn't mean that we are to go willy-nilly simply because we've been vaccinated or to wish death on anyone who has not been. But it does mean that there's more work to be done in terms of spiritual awareness. Why do I say that? Because what I have been noticing is with each manifestation, there has been a shift in the approach towards COVID. With this current manifestation, what we have seen is a new variant appear, and the expectation is that it's a threat to the southern states in the winter months, as opposed to now, because people are actually distanced from each other than they would be when it's cold, a greater distance from each other than they would be when it's cold. That tells me that some other things has to take place. And I don't know what those things are, but I do know that we have not yet gotten to a place where COVID is not going to pose a threat. The work that has to continue is, again, desiring and receiving the enlightenment, understanding what the scriptures are saying, not only teaching it, but breathing it, living it, being consciously aware of our environmental surroundings so that we can read properly the signs of the times and address them. Because as we address them and see the manifestations of positivity, it is then that we begin to mitigate the effects and the threats of the virus itself. Any questions about that? I hope you understand what I'm saying, or at least make what to say. Yes.
I just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to everyone, because I read an article the other day where it says that on Mother's Day, mothers get taken out to the peddler, and on Father's Day, fathers go to McDonald's. So I wanted to make sure that every father was represented well today. So Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. And I'm waiting for you to take me to the peddler.
Hey, that can be arranged.
But thank you. And I say to each of the fathers the same thing. And
Pastor, can I bring something else up, please?
yeah,
Just something quick. I've been trying last few weeks, I guess last 3 weeks or so, keeping up with the vaccine, distributions in Africa. And as we know that a lot of it was coming from India, and we are familiar with what is taking place in India and the surge that they are fighting, and that too is from the Delta variant that they're fighting. So they're trying to hold on to as much as they can. But the promises that have been made to Africa are not being fulfilled. And not only are they not getting that vaccine, they're not getting the overdosages from other nations that have made the promise to send them. I just want to sort of put that out there so that we could be aware of it and just, do what you do. And so we, just to kind of put it out there so everybody can do their own meditations on it and make things happen.
There will come a time we will have to take the protection from diseases and the protection from infections, the healings from these diseases and infections. We have to take that into our own hands, Ron. And you know what? I believe that time is now.
Okay.
If we can affect the policies of a nation that's hell-bent on dehumanizing people of color and affect those policies to the point where they begin to show themselves as manifested change, then we are able to affect change in regards to healthy bodies for those who are being neglected. There are some things that the universe allows to happen to force us to do things that we would not normally even think about doing. And the universe exposes us to the powers that we are without us even knowing how to ask to be exposed. So what I am saying in essence is this. The vaccinations that we have received are in our physical bodies. We have the power of transformation of that energy of the vaccinations that's in our body, these antibodies, the energy that surrounds these antibodies. So why don't we simply transport the energy of our antibodies to the energy of our brethren worldwide who are in need of this deliverance from these diseases, from these infections. Why don't we simply just do it? And in doing it, knowing with great expectation that we will begin to hear that in places like Brazil, places at continents like Africa and India, that we will be able to see not only a huge decrease in the infection rate, but a total mitigation of the virus in those areas because of our desire to intermingle our energy of inoculation with their energy of infection. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Amen.
So let it be. It's done. That's the power that Avum not only grants us, but that's the power that Avum is when we are aware of our unicity with Avum, meaning that Avum is no different than we are, and we are no different than it is. Any other questions or comments? So on that note, let the deliverance, as we have spoken it, take place immediately. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the day.
Bye.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day,
Thank you.
everyone.
Happy Father's Day.